Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. Well, I hope you had a great weekend. Of course, a weekend filled with so much news and so much to talk about that I want to try to put some things in perspective. First of all, we are clearly about to take action in Venezuela. And this is an action by the President of the United States. Let's be clear. The President has absolute power when it comes to moving troops and perhaps even going into another nation, which is what Donald Trump has said he's already doing. So this is a serious matter which ought to be debated in the Senate and in the House. Oh, wait a minute. The House isn't even in session, so they can't really do much. And the Senate seems to be impotent, deadlocked, because we are now continuing in this process of being unable to sort out whether or not the government should reopen. Some people blame the Democrats, some people blame the Republicans, but the simple truth is there's enough blame for everybody, and that's it. There is a second major issue which we need to be aware of, and that is that President Putin has tested a new nuclear-capable weapon. And I must tell you, this is very concerning, because this new nuclear-capable missile could hit the United States. And the announcement, which followed years of tests, well, it's not really a surprise. But the question is, with a nuclear escalation, what do we all think we're heading toward? And I ask the question without any hesitation or doubt. There are serious questions in the world today, and as you know, President Trump is now in the Far East. He's meeting with leaders and will be meeting shortly in Korea with the president of China, and they will have talks affecting trade. We are already told, the White House says there is a preliminary agreement on the question of tariffs. That's good news, but of course, both sides understand how much is at stake. There is another question which certainly must be dominating the news, and that was Donald Trump's statement this weekend that he is not ruling out running for a third term. Let's be clear, he can't run for a third term. There is no provision for him to run. Just read the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution. Now, there are some, including some of you who I know quite well, who sent me emails and texts saying, well, John, he could run, couldn't he? Maybe he'll never leave the White House. Tim, in Oregon, you asked me that question, and I'm answering you directly right now. There is no way that the President of the United States can legally stay in the White House at the conclusion of this term. Somebody asked the question, well, what if Vance runs for president and he takes Trump as his running mate? Doesn't work. It will not stand the test of the Constitution. But this is a very interesting situation because it means that the Republican Party is no longer a party. It is Trump. And the question of how they work their way through that situation is going to be really something. I want to say a word about government closure. We're now seeing the impact of this multi-week government shutdown. Of course, the government hasn't shut down completely, but we're already seeing food stamps, SNAP as it's now called, in jeopardy for millions of Americans. And this is something everyone needs to be aware of. I don't know, as I said earlier, who to blame, but I can tell you it's unacceptable. Can you imagine if there were a true national crisis? And I mean a national crisis. What would the reaction of the House of Representatives be? Mike Johnson is the Speaker. It is his discretion to call the House back into session. He says he's going to do it, but, well, he hasn't done it yet. And this means there is something of a stalemate in terms of the way we are functioning. There is also the matter, and I mentioned it a moment ago, of Venezuela. and the question of presidential action. Let me remind you, the War Powers Act, which theoretically was supposed to prevent unilateral action by a president, really isn't working. And in fact, as I informed you recently, Tom Eagleton, the senator who originally put the idea together, voted against the War Powers Act, as he told me in an interview we did, that, in fact, the War Powers Act expanded the power of a president when it comes to making war, because there is no check or balance. And that means that the President of the United States really has to be on top of things. And may I tell you, Dwight Eisenhower once said that the only way he would be involved in a foreign intervention was if he first consulted with leaders of Congress. And that is precisely what this president ought to do. But wait! That's right. The House of Representatives isn't in session, and the Senate seems to be impotent. And that means you have a president who is able basically to do whatever he wants. One of the things that really worries me, and I talked about this last week, is a statement by Anthony Kennedy, former Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court, who is now doing interviews promoting a new book he has written. He talks directly about the importance of three co-equal branches of government. Well, clearly we don't have three co-equal branches of government. Clearly, the idea that Donald Trump and his key supporters have of a unitary presidency, that is to say, a presidency which dominates all the other branches, is deeply disturbing. I want to close this particular podcast with missing in action. The Supreme Court of the United States is missing in action, and they need to decide a variety of issues on presidential power, on the question of the legality of the Trump tariffs. There are so many different issues that the Supreme Court has to address, and so far they are not addressing them. So the Supreme Court is missing in action. And let me point out as well, we are missing something else. The East Wing of the White House has been demolished. I'm told there is a lawsuit to try to have everything restored to the way it was. You and I know that isn't possible. There will be a lot of discussion in the days ahead about what Donald Trump intends to do with the White House. Let me simply indicate to you that what he has done is a desecration, in my judgment, of the history of our great country. And all you have to do is listen to the reaction of former First Ladies and, yes, former First Families to understand how upset the American people should be. We'll talk more about this in the days ahead, but I wanted this morning to begin with just outlining some of the things which I see on the horizon, things that are happening now, things which we have to react to. And may I tell you, it makes what we are doing right here and around the political world with John Rothman even more important. And certainly for you who are listening, the importance of what we are saying should provoke discussion in all of your homes and schools and offices, wherever you are, because that is the essential element of American democracy. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can interact with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and, of course, through my personal email. And many of you contact me, and I'm delighted to hear from you. I want to say a special thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast. Gogo, thank you for everything you do every single day. I am John Rothman. I will be back tomorrow with another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.